Hello and welcome to Tippcast today with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Head of Sport in the Nina Guardian, Shane Brophy. Big weekend coming, there's plenty of finals at different grades. A lot to talk about across the board, Shane, but I might just mention at the start that we've got, this is with our game, my other iteration, I've got a coaching clinic coming up on Bank Holiday Monday, October 31st. It's going to be a brilliant session with Niall Moore, and of course, former Limerick player and coach, and Art Scullereach and the whole lot. Paddy Stapleton involved with Borrisoleigh obviously over the years and done a lot of underage coaching, and Eddie Brennan as well, who's been previously obviously manager across the board, Kilkenny under 21s as it was at that time, Laois manager. He was also briefly my manager at Coola as well, and it's going to be some great stuff there.
And I suppose currently Eddie's in with Ross Gray, who are in the Premier Intermediate final Sunday, and by all accounts he's loving it in Ross Gray. He was only supposed to get involved maybe now and again in the last few weeks, but he seems to be down there every session, so he's definitely bought into what Ross Gray have been selling. So
yeah, well, having had him for a nice few sessions with Coola, I thought he was excellent, and I can imagine they're buying into what he's saying. And the few coaching clinics we've done already have gone so well, and it's very much start off with a couple of minutes of a brief, show what the coaches are going to do, ask anyone to have any questions that they want to work in, and it's very collaborative from then on, all the coaches working with each other. So it's great stuff. So you can just check my Twitter at Shane Saint. You'll find the link to that. Where do you want to start off with this week's stuff? Like, we have a lot to talk about. There's Camogie, there's hurling, obviously. There's a bit of football to look back on. But it's a battle of the north anyway in the county final, Kiladangan against Kilruane. Are you fired up by this meeting going into the county final? Is this the sort of matchup that you were hoping to get at the start of the year?
Look, it's exciting because I suppose it's the local derby element. I suppose we've had it maybe over the last week. We would have had Thurles, a lot more games. I think we've had very, very few next door neighbour county finals in senior hurling, which is great. It just adds something different to it. It's a recent rivalry between the two of them. But I suppose maybe up to 20 years ago, Kiladangan probably would have been an afterthought in terms of senior hurling, and they wouldn't have come up against Kilruane an awful lot. And then I suppose Kilruane dropped back down to intermediate in late 90s and back down to where Kiladangan were, and Kiladangan were on the rise then. And I suppose that's definitely in the last 10, 12 years is where we've seen a lot of the history of this fixture. And Kiladangan they've had the better of it. There's no doubt the 2016 North final, the 2021 North final, but Kilruane had it in 2018 when they beat Kiladangan the North final. So, and I suppose that's the one aspect that makes this game so compelling, is that you might look at the Kiladangan squad and think they have the depth. There'd be fancy to win it. If Kilruane had from 2018, if they produce something special on the day, they could be collecting the arena on Sunday. So that's the exciting aspect of it for me.
Is there any part of you that thinks Kiladangan have that bit of experience of being in county finals? Like 2016 didn't go their way. Thurles beat them well, 27 points to 115. The next time out against Borrisoleigh was 115 to 112 loss. And I would imagine they're still kicking themselves over some of the chances they left behind in that game. Doesn't mean they would have won it, but just they left chances behind them. And then ultimately won in 2020 in fairly thrilling circumstances against Kiladangan or against Lockmore, Castleiney. Kilruane haven't gone through that. So this is their first time at the big dance for these players. Obviously, the club has been there before, but it is the first time at the big dance.
It is, but there's an awful lot of guys in that Kilruane team that have played in big games. You go from Paddy Williams there this year in the Munster Under 21 final through Jack Peters played in an All-Ireland minor final, and if I'm not mistaken, he might have played in a schools colleges final for Nina CBS about 10 years ago. I could be somebody watching might be over with correction, but I think he was on that team. And then you go Niall O'Mara, Cian Darcy, Jerome Kelly. They have a lot of Cian O'Kelly. They have loads of guys that have played arguably in bigger games, like for Tipperary, if you know what I mean. Maybe not in club. But you've played, you would have spoken to Paddy with Borrisoleigh, you would have experienced for Cooley yourself. There's probably it's just me. It feels a little different when it's for the club. You feel like you're playing for your next door neighbour and your family, and there's probably a bit more pressure to it as well. So there's no doubt about it. That should stand to Kiladangan. But it's something I put to Alan Flynn and Sean O'Mara last week when I was doing a bit of press work for ahead of the final. That does it feel like you're going to have to try and win it again because of 2020 was you'd only 100 Kiladangan people in the stadium that day? Like it's sort of this time it'd be different. But in fairness to them, the same answer. Look, it was still our first win. Nothing will ever take that away. But maybe in the back of maybe a couple of players' minds, but I think God, this will be a proper county final. It'll be what 6, 7, 8,000 people at it. Like so, it'll feel like a proper county final maybe compared to 2020 on Sunday.
And like, do you think for Kilruane, like you can't both rate the players that they produced over the last number of years, but there has been a bit of a nearly men vibe to them. Like, do you think that would there be any concern for them? Do you think that they go in and be in the first final, that there might be a bit of a non-performance, or they mightn't get fully going here, or do you expect them to be going hell for leather from the get-go?
I don't think so, because the fact is, who their opposition are is Kiladangan. Like, so again, that might help them in some way, in that it's a neighbour, it's a familiar opponent, like that they played in the first round of the North Championship back in June. Like, so maybe that will maybe take the edge off in terms of maybe the manager say, look, we're playing Kiladangan in a match. We're not playing it. Maybe whether it's a county final maybe is irrelevant. If they focus on playing Kiladangan, that might just take the edge off in terms of playing the occasion rather than playing than focusing on the game. Like I remember, I was doing a bit of research on from '95 when Nina Rogue, they're the Jubilee team on Sunday, the '95 team that won the county championship, and there was I think Eddie Tucker, who was man of the match, that they referenced when they lost the '93 final to Mivara 2 years previous. They said in '93 we came to play in a county final. This year we came to win a county final, and that's just said to me, like if Kilruane get bogged down and playing in a county final, I bet they need to be focusing on winning a county final. Like so.
Yeah, definitely. Like if you start buying into the occasion and getting too pumped up like 3 or 4 hours beforehand, I know having done that in 2012, the entire team, and then a bit of a no-show performance after that. So that's something Kilruane have to avoid. Get your comments in. Let us know who you think will win. What's going to be the thing that decides the match? Who do you think the players are that'll decide it? So can you just outline the management teams? Because we're going to parse this every which way. We're going to bring up the tactics board shortly. Let us know what matchups you think are going to happen and you're excited by. But just in terms of the management teams, can you sort of outline both Kilruane and Kiladangan?
Yeah, sure. Like I suppose we go through Kiladangan first. Like they are officially a management team, even though Sean O'Mara has been doing an awful lot of media work after games. But like it's according to their I suppose match programs for recent games, the management team, like of Dara Egan, current Wexford manager, but has been heavily involved in bringing through many Kiladangan teams over the years. Yeah, Dan Hackett, I think he was the 2016 county final manager, if I'm not mistaken. Like Sean O'Mara, more Shannon Rovers, but he's the father of Dan, Tom, and John O'Mara. So like he would have played intermediate with tip down through George Hannigan from Shannon Rovers as well. Look, he former Tipperary player and footballer, and Sean Tracy from Portumna, who's the current Clare senior hurling coach, and he was retained from the last management team as well. So like he's well in with this group of players. So like it's very much a collaborative approach. Like there's no lead man there. I suppose down on the sideline during match days, it does look like it's Dan and Dara who are up on the sideline driving it on. But like it's a very, very experienced group there.
Yeah, and then Kilruane as well.
Yeah, we'll go to Kilruane. Yes, it's managed by Liam O'Kelly. I suppose probably would have been unheard of when he got the job a couple of years ago. He would have been involved with the Kilruane minor B team that won a North Championship a few years before that. But he would have been originally from Tumivara, but his sons Jake and Keane are hurling with Toom. So he's living in the parish now, and look, he just seems to have ticked all the boxes. Like the one thing I would have learned from Limo, that's why he's attention to detail and the preparation, and done a terrific interview with him in the paper this week about what when he got the job and the plans he put in place. And I suppose key among them was developing a gym in this complex in Cloughjordan, just purposely so that lads aren't going here, there, and everywhere to do their gym sessions. That lads all they all come to the one centre in Cloughjordan, and it's developed a bit of a team spirit. Like lads I think he said 185 gym sessions between gym and training they've done this year up to last week, which is incredible. Again, you can just see that bit of team spirit in them has come from that. Like they're a very, very much united bunch. Then you look and their coaches, Christy Morgan, like he's been involved with numerous underage teams down through the Clears, like Aaron and Craig's father, Brian Buggy O'Mara. He needs no second introduction. One of the best players, I suppose, of the club for the last 10 or 12 years. And I suppose officially he's a player coach. Like he came on against Toom and did a cracking job and got a brilliant goal. And Pat Murphy, probably more into the football side of things. He would have been with, I think he was a selector with the Tip Miners when they won the Football All Ireland in 2011. So he's there. And of course, it was something Liam Kelly wanted to mention is the fact that I suppose that they're down two key members of their backroom. Their trainer Dan Finnerty moved to Australia during the summer months, like for work, and the S&C coach Paddy Quillen, he departed for Australia 2 days after the semi-final, which that Sunday should have been county final day, but for I suppose the Dylan Quirk tragedy, it delayed everything by a fortnight. So unfortunately, he couldn't stay on. I'm sure Dan and Paddy will be watching on from Australia on what will be early hours of Monday morning when the county final is on down there.
Yeah, no doubt they'll be watching the tip stream of that. When, like, if you look at the semi-finals, I was very impressed with Kilruane. They started well. I mean, both teams were hitting wides at the start of the game with terrible conditions. But once they got their goal from Jerome Cahill blocking down the goalkeeper and they were tipping over some nice points, Upperchurch made a fair burst back and Jack Butler soloed up through the centre, well, I suppose from the flank and came in through the centre, and maybe that was where you were missing Jack Peters, who'd gone off injured, and we'll talk about whether he'll be available or not. So being run up the guts and having a goal scored that way, that's a bit of a concern because no team wants to concede goals like that. And it makes me think of how they lost to Lockmore last year, the way they were able to get too many goals. Mm-hmm. But they took the blows that Upperchurch gave them and they had a very composed second half and sort of pulled away. And then obviously Kiladangan did excellently against Drum. How much do you look into those semi-finals in terms of the form lines going into it?
I should look, I think both teams, arguably produced their best performance of the campaign in the semi-finals, which is what you want. I thought Kilruane were very professional in what they did against Upperchurch. Like all the talk coming in was Upperchurch. They were going for the double. They had serious momentum behind them. But I thought from an early stage, it looked like Kilruane just had a bit too much class. Like Niall O'Mara was just, the ball seemed to be coming to him like glue in the first half, and he was pinging it around, and Jerome Cahill was getting on the ball, Cian Darcy was getting on the ball, like their big players were getting on the ball and being busy, which was key for them. And like go to Kiladangan, okay, they had another sluggish start, but it just, once they got that bit of confidence before half time, the scores began to flow. They got Sean Hayes and Joe Gallagher into the game. Like they're so important in that half hour, and if they get on an awful lot of ball, they're going to make things happen, because I suppose Hayes just has the pace and that stride to get away from defenders, and like Joe Gallagher is just the spiritual leader of that team, like, and he just never seems to let the side down whatsoever.
No, Keone 8 says Jerry Cahill is hugely important to what Kilruane do. Will Kiladangan have to man mark him to curb him? Alan Flynn is the question he throws out there. Again, keep your comments coming in and let us know what you think and keep the questions going. So we'll bring up the tactics board here, which we love to do now and again, especially for big occasions like this. Now, we're basing the teams on what started in the semi-final. You know, unless you're inside the camp, you probably don't know if Jack Peters is going to start or if there's any other tweaks going to start. And in some situations, we put number 12 on Thomas Cleary here. He's been wearing number 11. Sean McAdams, sometimes you'd see him around the midfield area, but you would suggest that you'd possibly see him around number 11. And Jerome Cahill wore 30 the last day, but we're throwing him in full forward here. So what's kind of jumping out to you straight away in terms of the matchups? To me, if Joe Gallagher can break even on Niall O'Mara, I think that would be a huge win straight away for Kiladangan.
Yeah, that one for me, purely on the basis of what will Kiladangan do. Like in the semi-final against Drum, they played Sean Hayes at centre forward and Joe Gallagher on the wing, and I just thought it got the best out of Sean Hayes, and it put Podge Campion on the back foot. So I said it in my preview, what will what will Kiladangan opt to do? But just because Niall O'Mara is so central to what Kiladangan or for Kilruane do, will they go with the younger and the pace of Sean Hayes and try and put Niall O'Mara in the back foot, or will they go with the guile and experience of Joe Gallagher maybe to try and negate Niall O'Mara's influence? I know you would have seen both guys hurl. It's hard to know. They can go both ways. I'd be probably leaning they might go with Gallagher on O'Mara, but I suppose it's great for Kiladangan that they do have two different options to play that centre forward role, like her, one with pace, one with that bit of guile and a bit of leadership, and Gallagher who can stick his hand up in the air and catch a high ball and maybe drive over a long range score.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at the inside forward lines, at one side you've Cian O'Kelly, Jerome Cahill and Cian Darcy. The other side you've Willie Connors, Billy Seymour and Malachny. That's some serious inside forward power, isn't it, on both teams?
Yeah, I'd probably be thinking Cian O'Kelly would probably drift out a bit. I don't think either team will play a 3-man foot forward. I'd expect maybe Willie Connors will pull out a little as well. There is an option for Kiladangan if they to play Paul Flynn inside, but he started wing forward in the last two games. Look, himself and Billy Seymour could maybe flip those positions every now and again. And look, I suppose a lot of maybe what Kilruane decide to do on matchups will be determined by Jack Peters' injury. Will he be fit to play? Look, he pulled a hamstring against Upper Church. He probably can't be 100%, but you'd like to think, will they take the risk? Again, I'm sure Jack would be thinking, God, it's the county finals. I'll give everything I have to contribute what I can out there. As long as it doesn't negatively affect the team's chances of winning, and just purely because of it, just say if they decide Jack can't go, what happens then? I do think that goal, as you mentioned, that Upper Church got in the semi-final where Jack Butler more or less ran through the heart, but Jack Peters wasn't there. Nobody was there to stop him coming through the middle, and I don't think that's any reflection on maybe Kieran Cahill or Owen Hogan who slotted in there. You're a defender. It's a mindset. If you're not used to the best fullbacks know when to go and know when to stay. A cornerback doesn't really have that mentality. Do you think, in terms of?
Well, if it really depends.
Fullback will always sense danger greater than a cornerback. If somebody coming through, they know I have to go here and at least maybe force the last pass. I think that was some of what we saw in terms of that goal.
Yeah, as you're saying, there tends a lot of time with cornerbacks, not all of them, but they're often a player who does a bit of hurling as well, likes to get out in front and likes to, bring the ball out with them. Yeah. A fullback, generally, the mindset is to mind the square and thou shalt not pass. The ball might come through, the man might come through, but you're both not coming through together. So that's a huge thing. And James Quigley will be there at the other end, and that will be his mentality. And like you talked about the goalkeepers, so Paddy Williams, one end, was with the Tip under-20s, very good. He went off during the quarterfinal. He had a bit of an injury at one stage. Now, hopefully he's fine now, but you'd have to say that the experiences at the other end with Barry Hogan, not only playing in these finals, but also he's obviously played there with Tipperary, and he's so composed on the ball and so mobile coming out with it too. So, that's not to downplay Paddy Williams, but we just see the CV of Barry Hogan is excellent at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it'll be the thought process in terms of what to do with Jack Peters. I think they'll give him every chance, but then would be thinking, one, probably the likely guy to come in would be Seamus Hennessy, because they've held him in reserve for the last two games. But I'd be thinking, this is too big of a game to be holding Seamus Hennessy back. But then that leaves you with probably no impact ability off the bench, and that's probably why I came down on the side of Kiladangan probably winning this game, is that they do have guys on the bench that have impact ability. If you don't play, if you start Seamus Hennessy, really what you're left with is Conor Cleary. He's only got a few minutes in this championship. Éanna Hogan, I don't think he's played in this championship. Brian O'Mara probably doesn't have the sharpness or maybe the fitness at this stage for any more than maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So and look, are they going to get they got the reaction out of Brian O'Mara against Toomevara? Is lightning going to strike twice? Look, it could, but it's probably difficult to imagine. So But then there's a chance if they could start both Peters and Hennessy. And I personally, I think, I don't know what you think, I think a game like this, you need Seamus Hennessy on the field for every minute possible. And because, look, he's the spiritual leader of that team. Like, Seamus Hennessy's been playing senior hurling since he was 15 years of age. He played in a county championship match in Semple Stadium for Kilruane in 2005. I think he was only 15 years of age. Like, that's how long this guy is hurling. Like, and this is huge for him. Like, I remember the emotion coming out of him in 2018 when they won the North final, and you can only imagine what it'd be like if. I just think he offers too much of an upside not to start him. And look, he's pedigree. Look, his father won a sea of county championships with Kilruane, the great Kilruane team 30, 40 years ago. So he has the tradition, the pedigree. So I can't not see him starting either be for Peters or potentially maybe a Conor Austin loses out, which would be unfortunate for him. But it'll be interesting to see what I can see why they've held Hennessy back, but I can't not think that this is too big of a game not to have him on the field for as long as you can.
Yeah, well, on big occasions, players with sure hands are very, very important. Yeah. Obviously, he's a great pair of hands. It's then about where would you play him, and would it be a case of throwing him in maybe as a sweeper and allowing Niall O'Mara to push on?
I'd say if he starts, he'll go in. I'd say if he starts, he'll go in at wing back, and that's where he's come in the last couple of games. And then he did play the sweeper role. Was like Upchurch did play a sweeper role in the semi-final. Of course, he was made for it. Then Niall O'Mara was able to push up onto the centre forward, and you knew Seamus Hennessy would read the play. And then he's just a brilliant, crisp striker of ball. And when he launches a 60, 70 yard ball into the forwards, it's driven, and it's driven hard, and like it's driven to the advantage of their forwards. And because he can also pick up off long range scores.
Well, that is definitely the advantage to him. But like, obviously, you wouldn't be thinking that Sean Hayes would be the natural matchup for him there. Probably just not on a pacey guy. Maybe they'd think, right, maybe put him on Joe Gallagher, and Joe Gallagher has been excellent in all the big games, but in terms of like, he's not the fastest of the forwards, so maybe it would suit him in some ways and physically get stuck into each other. Are there any other players that you're thinking could be the star men coming into this final? I mean, Jerome Cahill, we've already mentioned. Is there going to be a special plan, do you think, from Kiladangan to try and deal with him, or just whoever's on him is on him?
I don't think so. I just think it would probably upset the balance of the Kiladangan defence too much if they went mark. And I think maybe Declan McGrath could get that job, but then they do have flexibility in their defence. Like David Sweeney can play equally comfortably at a cornerback as he can at wing back. Then David Sweeney is an excellent man marker too. I thought he played very, very well on Seamus Callanan in the semi-final. So like the Sweeney probably could be the option. I don't think they'll upset maybe their half-back line too much. Like McAdams can sort of play. He'll drift back into the middle of the field, so you probably could have Tom Cleary drift in around centre forward, and like he's very, very strong in the air. Like, but the Willie Clearys, the Tom Clearys, the Keane O'Kellys, they're very, very good at getting on the ball and maybe running at teams, and they'll get on the ball and hopefully get it into the hands of Cian Darcy and Jerome Cahill to get good. Like, I think Mark O'Neill has had a great campaign for Kilruane in the middle of the field. Ty Gallagher probably, I don't think there's an official player of the championship in Tipperary. He would be that for me, and I think if he's a strong final, he probably definitely be that. So look, there's so many guys of substance on both teams. Like, you go from Alan Flynn and David Sweeney, James Quigley, Joe Gallagher. Like, there's so many guys of substance on both sides. Probably more on the club end for Kiladangan and maybe on the inter-county end from Kilruane's point of view. And that's what gives Kilruane such a good chance, is that maybe they don't have county final level experience, but they have big game experience from an awful lot of guys on their team.
Yeah, I'd look at it and think there's probably more goals in this Kilruane team. Like, if you were to go, had 10 matches side by side, I would imagine that Kilruane would get more goals. But like, I wonder at some stage, is the loss of Craig Morgan going to catch up with them? Like, they've been good in games, but like the way they conceded the goal late on to Toomey Var, the way Jack Delaney was able to get in and bury one, the way we already talked about Jack Butler getting through for goals. I just wonder, will a Willie Connors or Paul Flynn or Billy Seymour, whatever, Sean Hayes, be able to get through. And as I named that forward line, I hadn't even named Brian Mallochny and Joe Gallagher, it's just there's an awful lot of threats, even though I have just said, because
and like there's probably Dan O'Mara to come on as well. And I suppose if Dan was fully fit and firing and up to speed, he would probably be starting the final. And look, he may well. I won't say like he did look. He took his goal brilliantly in the semi-final. I was looking back at it again and said, geez, that touch was incredible.
Unbelievable.
And of course, he had one off the crossbar. So it looks like a guy, because the fact he's played so little this year because of injury and probably lack of form, he looks like a guy who's back into form now, and he could be the match winner. Sorry, what was the question you were asking?
Well, I was just talking about like there's all those different threats for Kiladangan, different players who can score, but it's still maintained that the lads that I think are more likely to score goals are at the Kiladangan end of the field. Jerome Cahill, because he can score them and he set them up brilliantly. Yeah. But Cian O'Kelly is also a battering ram.
Yeah, and like Cian O'Kelly, I think going back to that North Championship game, he gave James Quigley a lot of it, and there was a frustration from me that day looking at Cian O'Kelly, and is that he tries to do too much himself. He's a brilliant guy in possession in terms of he's such a battering ram. He's so direct, but a lot of the time he doesn't see the guys around him, or he could just give a dink hand pass off to, and either there's somebody around him, maybe stick it in the net. I just think that was the one aspect of his game that, if from a Kilruane point of view and a Tipperary point of view going forward, if they could shave that off and just get him to see he could be so effective in drawing defenders and slipping a pass. He mightn't score in a game, but he could be assisting so many. And I just think if he's able to learn from that and maybe become the battering ram and the guy that brings other guys into the play, he could be Kilruane's match winner on Sunday.
So to put the neck on the block, you're saying Kiladangan?
I'm saying Kiladangan purely. I do think it'll come down to subs, and I just think Kiladangan's bench, like you have Dan O'Mara, you have Fergal Hayes, you have Rory Gleeson, Jack Lucknan, the guys that have been there and done it before, and that could be the difference for me. I think it'll be a good final. I just think that maybe they'll draw the best out of each other. I think it's a local derby. I think a lot of North Tipperary people will probably come to Thurles because I suppose people maybe not familiar with Tipperary hurling. We're very clannish here. Like, while there's two North teams, there's sort of a badge of honour from the rest of the North clubs. God, we're rivals of these two, but geez, we like to see ourselves thinking we're better than the mid and the west and the south and that sort of thing. So I think there'll be a big crowd and of course Roscrea are in the Premier Intermediate final, so they'll bring a big crowd too. So I think it'll be a special day, like it always is. And of course, you mentioned Nina or the Jubilee team, so they'll bring their clutch of people down. So just hope the weather is good on Sunday. I know it's not looking hectic for Friday. A lot of rain, I think, coming tonight. So Jesus, just hope we get a good final, because I know the rain spoiled the football final last Sunday.
Yeah, it definitely did. And we'll talk a bit more about football, but I'd be inclined to go with you. I think if Kilruane win, there will be tears from people of all ages, including the players. But it's hard to just go against Kiladangan with their big game experience at club level. Thomas Conway joins us now. Thomas, we might as well get your thoughts on who you think is going to win the final and why.
Yeah, I think Kiladangan will probably edge it. I think they have a little bit more experience, a little bit more kind of know-how, I suppose, when it comes to big games like that, like this. Now, I like the look of Kilruane all year, for most of the year, and it's amazing that given the injury setbacks they've had with trajectory, but I probably find it hard. I won't lie, I'd like to see him probably win it. Kiladangan kind of had their moment, I suppose, against Lockmore 2 years.
Can you hear him there, Shane?
No, he's frozen up on me there.
Yeah, Asher, maybe you'll just try and come back on again, Thomas. Maybe on a different device. Yeah, so,
I something I suppose, I think something that can't be forgotten in all this, and I suppose it's the ghost, I think, of Dylan Quirk, sort of. It's sort of hung over this championship, and I kind of feel that, okay, while Clonalty are not in the final, it kind of feels right that if Clonolty weren't going to be in the final, Kilruane were going to be there, just because of, I suppose, their involvement with that tragic night in August when Dylan passed away. And look, it's hard not to think he won't be part of county final, and maybe he's. I think he's ghost in a good way. Will be all over this final. And look, if we get a storyline after this weekend of Clonolty winning their first ever senior Camogie and Kilruane winning their senior hurling, I just think it would be, if you're to write a storyline for the weekend right now, you'd think they would be two outcomes you want, but that we'll have to wait and see. But it would feel appropriate in some ways, if you know what I mean. Like, and that's not denigrating Kiladangan or Drummoninish in any way in the big games of the weekend. Like, so.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what sort of reception you have there, Thomas, at the moment, but sure, we'll give you a blast once more. Your thoughts on the county final.
Good room.
Yeah, I've just moved position here, hoping that'll help me. But you were talking about the county final. Yeah, I think Kiladangan will probably edge it. As I said, I think they have that little bit more experience and know-how when it comes to this stage of the season at, such a big occasion. Kilruane, obviously, hugely competent side. They have, they bounced back from setbacks from the Jerome Cahill injury and that. But I just think Kiladangan will shade it in this instance.
Yeah. Can you tee us up for the County Camogie final this weekend? Drummoninish against Clonolty Rossmore in the Rag. Just give us the background to this and how the two teams have been going heading into the final.
Yeah, pretty intriguing battle. I mean, it's their third successive meeting in a county final in a row. So they've met in the previous 2 years, and Drum have won both of them by relatively tight margins. Have been close games, particularly last year's game. It was on Saturday evening in the Rag, and Clonolty pushed them. They really pushed them. But Drum just emerged, and Drum went on, of course, and they had that heartbreaking Munster final defeat to Scarf O'Gunlow. Aoife McGrath missed a last-minute free to level the game. They then lost to Sarsfields in the delayed 2020 All-Ireland semi-final. And I suppose, speaking to Mairead Evanston, their captain, during the week, that has been playing on their mind since then. They really want to get back to that. They've been in the past 3 Munster finals. They've won one of them. But I sense, and I think the Drum players and their manager, Pat Ryan, senses that there is an All-Ireland in this team. And I suppose this county final is a necessary step on that road. For Clonolty, they've had a fairly impressive season. Obviously, Cotavan has been their main sharpshooter. They also have Casey Hennessy up front. She scored 1-1 in the semi-final win. And I mean, she's a very powerful asset in the forward line. Clonolty would be hard pushed to win this. There's no doubt. I mean, Drum are a very seasoned, kind of experienced bunch of players now. They know how to cut it at this level. But I mean, I suppose Clonolty will feel they're under new management this year. They'll feel like, this is their third time in a row. This is their shot at it. So it'll be intriguing, but I would expect Drum just to shade it.
Yeah, what would you be thinking, Shane?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Clonolty got it done this time. They're just, you think that they'd be knocking on the door. I think they lost. I think it's their 4th final in 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think they lost 1 to Duhara, and they've lost the last 2 to Drum, and they've been getting closer each time. And I suppose they met in the group stage, and Drum won narrowly again. So look, I suppose it's the same story. Like, it seems to be, and every time the difference should be, and we saw it in the semi-final when Drum beat Anacarty. Drum's ability to get goals has got them through games in this championship so far. If Clonolty can keep the goals out, I give them every chance. They're battle hardened. They beat Cashel in the semi-final by a point. They conceded a goal, I think, at 45 minutes stage. Cashel went ahead, and you think, if there were any bit of mental weakness here, they'd fall away. No, they came back and they won it. So I don't know, something tells me this could be Clonolty's year, and they look, after all the heartache that Parish has had, if there's any group deserves some bit of solace and a bit of joy this weekend, it's Clonoulty, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're county champions for the first time on Saturday.
They'll have to get goals, though. They will have to get goals to do it, and that's why, that's why I mentioned Casey Hennessy there, because I mean, you can fall under the impression that they're solely reliant on Courtevan because she is their main score getter, and obviously she's a brilliant sharpshooter from frees. But Casey Hennessy is their goal threat. Now, they also have a very strong half-back line. They have a very strong platform from there. And if they can get bodies forward from midfield, but I mean, there will be a challenge as well to contain the Drum forward line. That is going to be difficult. The likes of Joanne Ryan and that very experienced Miriam Campion, that is going to be the challenge for Clonoulty. But, I take a point, Shane. I think Clonoulty probably have it in them, and they are probably sore over the past 2 years, and certainly won't lack motivation.
Yeah, and just in terms of who would you, outside of the players that you've named there on the Drum side, who do you think could be the star players in this game, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're probably looking at the usual figures. You're looking at Aoife McGrath on the frees, Aoife McGrath, their half-back line platform is also very powerful. Aoife McGrath was captain last year. You have the likes of Miriam Campion getting forward. And I just think Drum they're very powerful as a collective. They really know each other, and Pat Ryan has really kind of shaped a proper game, a game plan there. They're a dynamic team. They kind of like to get forward from the half-back line, and that is where their attack stems from. And they've kind of committed to that brand of Camogie as well. They don't tend to, winter Camogie, and we're approaching winter now, can often be a bit of a slogfest, but Drum have committed to this kind of fast-paced, counter-attacking brand of Camogie, and it has worked remarkably well for them. Now, as I say, the challenge for Clonoulty will be the challenge for the likes of Clodagh Quirk and that at centre back will be containing that Drum attack and containing their players coming forward from the half back line.
So next on the block, Shane, you're going for Clonoulty, and Thomas, you're going for Drum.
Yeah, I'm going for Drum just about. Yeah, and I think if Drum win this county final, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. I mean, they were beaten fairly comprehensively by Sarsfields of Galway in that All-Ireland semi-final last year, but I mean, have no doubt they have one eye on a potential All-Ireland title. There's no doubt about that.
So as a Ballina man, I wanted to ask you about Ballina beating Mullinahone in the intermediate football final last weekend. So, 2 years in a row winning county titles and stepping up the Tipperary football ladder. Kept Mullinahone to just one score from play. Éanna Ryan scored 1-4, but 4 of those points were from placed balls. Sounds like a very dominant performance.
It was, and it was a very memorable day to be there as a Ballina man. It was a magical day in many respects. It remarkably, everything just seemed to come together from Ballina, and I describe it as kind of a complete team performance. And I'll try to, obviously there's probably a bit of implicit bias there or unintended bias, but it really just, what they had been working on, the system they've been working to develop all year just came to fruition. And you have to single out Stephen O'Brien. I mean, he was imperious in the center of the field. His kicking from place balls, his kicking from off the ground was like Rory Beggan or like some of the best inter-county players there. He really just gave an exhibition. But it was a very rounded team performance. I was impressed with a number of Ballina players. You look at the likes of Mark Hanley there, centre back, who kind of... Yeah, he was super. And I mean, there are players there that I think from a Tipperary perspective warrant attention from David Power that he could look at. Michael Breen was another one. I mean, Michael Breen, now he's not going to leave the hurlers, but I mean, he played one beautiful ball, lobbed it in kind of in a parabola to Conor Maguire there, and Conor kicked the point. Conor was impressive as well. He was always very good. Now, I think, unfortunately, he's headed off to Australia now, so they'll probably be without him for the Munster campaign. I learned that on Sunday. But, there were a lot of aspects of Ballina's performance which were really impressive. And they still have quite a young team. I mean, when you exclude the likes of Tom Lee, who was very good, he was a sweeper kind of behind the half back line. I mean, they have a lot of very young players like David Grace, players like James Hanley, whom I mentioned. Their substitutes made an impact. Carl O'Donnell came on, got that last-minute goal, kind of bursted through a channel. So it was a really rounded Ballina performance. Probably disappointing from a Mullinahone perspective. I think they would be very disappointed because, I mean, I'd seen them play and beat Ballina comprehensively back in August, and they are a better team than what they produced on Sunday.
Yeah, and of course, Teddy Doyle, Tipperary footballer, wasn't even available to start for Ballina, so onwards and upwards for them. Will we quickly talk about the Tipperary football final last weekend and Clonmel's performance, Shane? They were fairly dominant. I think it was probably like 1-8 to nothing after about 28 minutes or something like that, so it was never really in doubt.
Yeah, I think there was no score in the first 13 minutes. They scored 1-8 without reply in 15 minutes, and that was it. And it was probably what I feared. I mentioned it last week. It had the bang of the 2019 final when J.K. Brackens came in, first year finalists, and by the time they got fully into the match, it was over. I wouldn't say Commercials played overly well. I don't know the Thomas stay on for much of this game, but when they clicked for that 15 minutes, they were outstanding. They were, and it's a thing that's frustrating me with Commercials. Like, if Commercials play like that for 60 minutes, there's a Munster club title there. I absolutely no doubt about it. But I just love to see them cut loose a small bit, and like they did there. And look, maybe they got to half time and it was 1-8 to a point. Just thinking, okay, we have it done. Upper Church really hadn't threatened in the first half, and in fairness, Upper Church to settle down. It did look like the occasion got to them a small bit, and that's understandable. It was the first ever county senior final. They improved a little bit in the second half, got their goal, missed the penalty. Like, it'd be interesting if they scored that penalty early in the second half, would have changed anything. But look, it was an expected win for Commercials. But I think that the thing for me with Commercials will be they go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh in 3 weeks' time to play the Cork champions. Like, player for player, they look very, very strong. I think they could have as strong a squad as any team left in the All-Ireland Club Series. Maybe look outside of maybe Kilcoo and Kilmacud, but I just love to see them go and have a right good go at this and allow the players to thrive. I just think they have too much. I'd love to see when they're forward. I just love to see them look. They have nothing to lose. They'll go down there. They'll be underdogs against Nemo or St. Fenber's. Like, I just love to see them go and take the game to them and really have a go.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to think that Clonmel couldn't have a right good bash at that. They're an excellent team, and I looked through the team, the amount of players that have played with the county hurling and football, obviously with James Kennedy. There's so much quality there. Did you see much of this game, Thomas?
Yeah, I stayed on for it, and I'd share the same sentiment expressed by Shane there. I think they're locked in. I mean, I don't know, was it the fact that, you know, they almost seem to tread too carefully, even though they had the game wrapped up at half time and should realistically kind of should have pushed on in the second half and kind of let loose a little bit, as you say there, Shane. But I mean, when you look, as you mentioned there, the quality of footballers which they have at their disposal, pound for pound, player for player, you know, they could match most club champions in the country. But I just wonder sometimes what's holding them back, like why they don't play a little bit more expansively. Is it kind of a, you know, like an apprehension or something like that, or have they just invested so much in a particular brand of football? But I think, like, they have the potential to go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and cause an upset. You know, the underdogs tag will be favourable to them, but they're not gonna get a result if they put in a performance like Sunday. I would be critical enough of them because now I suppose, look, they did their job, in fairness. And they came out of the win, and that was all they needed to do. And we were always gonna, you know, regardless of, you know, what way it panned out, it was Upper Church's first final, and that was the storyline, and nobody expected them to realistically challenge. But I do think Commercials are a bit hemmed in. I do think they can improve though, and I think they would improve against a better side.
I'd love to see them play Seamus Kennedy first, further up the field, because he glides over the ground, and they have so many big athletic players. You think if they got a hard running, fast paced style running at opponents in possession, like they create overlaps willy-nilly. Like Quinlivan, like James Morris, Sean O'Connor, like the three Kennedys, like they're a physically huge team, like so.
And they can transfer the ball very quickly. They can transition quite quickly. So there's potential for that to evolve there. But as you mentioned, like it will be a steep task to go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and play the Bars or Nemo.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, brilliant for joining us, Thomas. Really appreciate your thoughts, and we'll chat again soon.
Cheers. Thanks. Sorry for the internet connection. No.
Not at all. So the Premier Intermediate final is also on this weekend, and there's a huge card for either Roscrea or Gortnahoe Glengool, obviously getting up to senior level. But the winners will be representing Tipperary and Munster as well. And knowing that it's the 17th team in Tipperary rather than maybe like the 33rd best team in previous years, I think Tipperary can feel like maybe there's a chance of a team going some sort of distance this year.
Oh, definitely. And I suppose the carrot, the focus for Roscrea and Gortnahoe will be winning on Sunday and getting senior. That's the first and foremost. But yeah, I've been one of those people for a couple of years would have been in favour of allowing the Orion winners in as Tipperary's designated team in Munster, just because it gives us a better chance of I suppose doing what a lot of Cork clubs have done and what Kilkenny clubs, and we've seen it in Kerry, like they're getting to these big occasions and getting to Croke Park and creating memories that last a lifetime. And look, I would give either Roscrea or Gortnahoe any chance. I was just looking at the draw there. I think the Tip champions are playing Ballysaggart in the first round, and of course Ballysaggart they didn't even win Waterford, and that Waterford final was about 2 months ago. So I think went to Australia. So like how focused are they? And then once you get through the first round in Munster, you're off again because you're back on the horse again, maybe after winning a county championship and having a great set of celebrations and stuff. But look, focusing on the match in hand this Sunday, I think there's no doubt we have the two best teams in the championship in the final. I think it was after being relegated from senior last year, so many expected Roscrea to probably come straight back up, and they've given themselves a chance. They're in the final. They've thrown everything at this. They're a team that look like getting better as the year is going on. But look, I think they have a ferocious challenge in Gortnahoe. I think for me, they've been the team in the championship. They've been very, very dominant in a lot of the games, very controlled. They play a very quick brand of hurling. They love running at teams. They love running at speed. They have arguably the more simple stadium experience than a lot of this Roscrea team. Like Gortnahoe won a county intermediate final as underdogs 2 years ago, beating a Mount Temple Toohey team managed by Liam England, who's now the Roscrea manager. So Liam England will have won to go 0-2 against Gortnahoe in county finals. So, but then Liam England will have learned from that to know, okay, there were certain things maybe mine didn't do well that day, that maybe elements of the Gortnahoe game that Roscrea will be ready of. So, I think it's a fascinating game. I think Roscrea are favourites in many people's eyes, but I think Gortnahoe are favourites. I think Gortnahoe had the better semi-final win over St. Mary's. I think they had the best quarter-final win over Portrugue. So I think their form in terms of who they've beaten is slightly better than Roscrea's. But that's not to say, look, Roscrea have, and like there probably is a bit of pressure on Roscrea, because even within their own club, like, geez, lads, we need to get back to senior. This is Roscrea, first ever All-Ireland club champions. Everybody associates with Roscrea with being a senior club, so like that could create its own pressure too.
Yeah, and like I had someone contact me about Gortnahoe, and one of their players that was probably going under the radar a little bit, Dara Maher. Like,
yeah,
he's on 5'16" for the championship, still under 19, 6 foot plus. Apparently called up for the Tip under 20s now, but it was even listed out the scoring he'd done in some of the games, despite being heavily man-marked.
Big scoring.
Keane Hayes as well.
Like they have good forwards, and arguably I think they could have more scoring power maybe than Roscrea. Like Roscrea, a lot of it goes through Evan Fitzpatrick. Luke Cashin does most of his scoring from frees. You have like Alan Tynan, can score heavily, but he tends to do his best work further out the field. So, you would think there will be an awful lot of pressure on the Ross Gray backs to try and slow down that Gortnahu forwards, who would probably love the spaces in Semple Stadium.
Yeah, and even just to list out what Darragh Maher scored in those different games: 5 points against Killinall, 2-4 against Sarah's second team, 1-2 against Ballina, the same against Portrue, and another 1-2 against St. Mary's. So he's in serious form, and that's something that the management team in Ross Gray will definitely have to be keeping an eye out.
Well, like you think all those Gortnahu lads, like the mid underage hurling is a very high standard, and like you can be sure that the pick of the Gortnahu lads would have been playing Arctic Cup hurling in the Hurling CBS, and like they're picking off great habits. Like so, like they're a club that are getting stronger year on year. I don't know. I personally, I think they're my favourites for the game. Just I think their form, like both teams' form line coming into the final is very, very strong. I just think that to beat St. Mary's by 5 points in the semi-final, like that's impressive going now.
Yeah. We'll go to intermediate level then. Moneygall meets Skeheenarinky. And Skeheenarinky obviously did great last year getting into Munster. And look, I obviously haven't seen them. And I know the likes of Moneygall, that Joe Fogarty and Sean Kennelly are a couple of excellent young players, and they're both performing really well here. Skeheenarinky, I think, was it their last win, 8 points to 5? Very low scoring, horrible weather sort of affair. Could be horrible weather again, like as things are going on. I can hear the thunder rolling and the lightning flashing. But what would you think of Moneygall's chances here?
Look, I think that they'll definitely go in as favourites, but like Skeheen have sort of been written off every match they play in the county championship since they came up from junior at the start of the year. Everybody sort of half expecting this is the day they're going to fall, but they haven't fallen. And look, their football and background by Ballyporeen, as the pitches get softer and per possession is so important, like they'll be well able to mind the ball, like they'll be physically very strong. And I suppose that's maybe one aspect they will have over Moneygall, is that if conditions get difficult on Saturday and the exchanges get tight, they'll be well able to tighten things down. But look, I think Moneygall in scoring, beating Kilsheelan on a rotten day too. They scored 16 points on a rotten day in the quarter final against a Kilsheelan side who were probably similar to Skeheenarinky. So like I think that will have given Moneygall an awful lot of confidence, and I'd fancy them to come through that and get to the final.
You probably don't even want to talk about the other semi-final, do you? Drummond Inch's second team against Laura.
Sure. Look, it's a big game. I suppose from my point of view, but look, I suppose it's unlike probably the semi-final against Borris-Kane, where we were playing the next door neighbour, a great rival. We sort of knew each other inside out. We don't know an awful lot about Drummond Inch. I don't think we've even played senior, intermediate, junior, under 21, minor. I think there's very little history between the two of us. So look, all we know is that Drummond Inch, they're a hurling club. They will have they'll have probably a good few, maybe ex-seniors and maybe some up-and-coming underage guys or minors and 21s in there. So look, we know they'll be well prepared, and they will be going in as favourites. That's what everybody's telling us. So look, but we know firsthand, like Drummond Inch have topped their group. They're here in the semi-final on merit, and look, they'll be looking at maybe doing a Kiladangan and a Thurles Sarsfield, trying to get their second team up another grade as quickly as possible. And look, I'm sure they'll definitely have the playing ability to cause us a lot of trouble on Saturday. Yeah,
I'll just list out a couple of the other fixtures coming this weekend. The Junior A county final, Grange Moakler Ballyneal will meet Upper Church Drumban in Golden. Junior B final, Portrue against Solihead in Newport. Huh?
That's a semi-final, Junior B.
Oh, sorry, pardon me. It certainly is. I think we've touched on most stuff heading into this weekend. Just a reminder again that the coaching clinic, the Our Game coaching clinic, is on in Moneygall. This is on the October bank holiday, Monday. So it's going to be going at noon. Niall Moore and Paddy Stapleton, Eddie Brennan are going to be there, and it's going to be great stuff. So you can check my Twitter at Shane Saint if you want to get involved in that. Anything else before we finish up, Shane, other than pick up a copy of the paper, folks? It's out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. In fairness, like we've put in a lot of work, 16 pages supplement this week. And look, the supplement wouldn't happen essentially without the local businesses coming on board and clubs and taking out ads and I suppose helping us put that paper together. Like that wouldn't happen without them. So thanks to them for playing their part, and like people get out and buy it and support the local businesses that put their name to the paper. And just mention my other hat on from like across the line on Tip FM. We're doing a live county final special this Friday from Ryan's Pub in Kearney. For anybody who's not familiar, the pub in Kearney is probably about a mile inside the Kiladangan boundary from Kilruane. So if you're in the area, call down between 6 and 7. We'll have a bit of fun. That's the one good thing about this final. It's a respectful rivalry. There's no real bitterness between the two of them. And I suppose there haven't been traditional rivals yet for that bit of bitterness to be there. Might come over the next 10, 15, 20 years if they get into regular county finals. But should be a bit of fun on Friday evening, 6 o'clock down in Ryan's and in Kearney.
Absolutely right. So we'll see you all as we review this game again next Wednesday. Enjoy the match and keep the comments coming in, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks, Shane.
Cheers.